In this next segment ahead, we're going to put ourselves in the shoes of folks who might be living in high-rise condominiums here in the Bay Area, any place in the country right now, in light of what happened down there in Surfside, Florida. If you live in one of those condos, you probably have a homeowners association, and you're paying something into that for maintenance and repairs, and I'm sure there are literally thousands of people wondering whether their building actually is getting maintained and repaired. And joining us right now, we have a guest who can speak to this with some wisdom and experience. And he is an attorney who has represented people in cases like this, including a nearly $10 million suit in San Francisco, had to do with really a flaw in the design of a building. And we're talking about here, joining me here on the show at this point, Dan Rottinghaus, who is live with us on Wine Country Live right now. Good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Give us a quick synopsis on that case that I just referenced, the building that was too hot and residents felt like they were getting cooked.
Yeah, the buildings anymore downtown, in order to protect against noise, they're sealed up really tight. And as a result, they don't have the ventilation that would normally be attendant to, just throwing open your windows. Ventilation being fresh air from the outside and air changes like you might see in an airplane. But I think the most important thing on this, Barry, to take away from it is that homeowner associations don't have to wait until there's some kind of problem like a collapse or a crack or water intrusion. This was just heat gain in the unit, but California law allows you within the first 10 years to make a claim, even though you haven't yet suffered the problem. That's a real benefit to California homeowners.
Do you think my speculation is right? I feel like it is, that folks are probably asking questions of their homeowner associations now in a way they probably never have because of what happened in Surfside. Is there reason for concern legitimately, or was the Surfside case an outlier?
I think it was probably an outlier in the sense that the building was, I think, almost 50 years of age. But more important to your listeners is the fact that in California, like most states, and Florida as well, there's a time frame in which you can bring a claim for a defect. You can't really maintain a defect, so it's either inherent in the building or not. And that in California, that steel curtain, if you will, is 10 years after substantial completion. So it really just tells the boards of these various associations that they need to investigate these buildings before that 10-year clips off, and they don't have to wait until the problem manifests. In Florida, it manifested almost 50 years out, but it was probably something that had been attributable to the building all the way from its very beginning when it was built.
When I heard about the Surfside collapse, the first thing I thought of was is it Millennium Tower in San Francisco? Is that the correct name?
Yes, Millennium Tower.
Yeah, that's been in the news off and on for several years. There have been some lawsuits there. And my first thought was, well, is that building in danger of just literally falling down? Is that a far-fetched idea?
I don't think it's far-fetched. I represented about 118 of the homeowners in that particular claim. Again, that was a situation where the building, had some inherent flaw in the original construction and design. And again, on that one, there was the differential settlement. One portion of the building was sinking a little faster than the other. I don't think it was ever in serious danger of collapsing. But at the same time, if you don't address it, it's not going to correct itself. And I think that's the message, that California has passed a law that allows homeowners to make claims before the problems happen. So the idea is to just catch them before the 10-year period ends.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's kind of ironic in the middle of a drought to be talking about water damage, but the way that buildings are constructed and the water table beneath and all kinds of different things can coincide to end up with what they did have in Surfside, which looked like a lot of water damage and rust in the foundation structures, maybe in the pilings holding the building up. How would a homeowner, even in a building that's not a high-rise, let's say it's just like a 3-story condo complex here in a place like Napa, how would you have the wherewithal to know if anything was, if there were any shortcuts in construction, whether the design was faulty to begin with? Most of us don't have that enough knowledge to know what we're even looking at.
Right. No, so obviously the easiest way is to always do an inspection, a yearly inspection. Most projects have some facility manager or property manager who can look around, and you're really looking, Barry, for just differences in what you've seen one day versus the next. But I have a couple of little ideas that would help people out. One is slope is so very important in construction. That is, the slope of the actual building to a drain or to drain away from the building. If you have slope that comes back to your doors or slopes at the sills of the windows that head back towards the unit itself, those are indications that you have some problems, because you might not see it manifest inside, but it's inside the wall cavity itself. Another thing to look for are little fissures, cracks. Stucco, for example, it always does crack, but when it cracks into like a spider web, then that's indicative of something more, like there's too much water that's getting through it. The same thing with concrete. A lot of people believe that concrete is not porous, but it is. And inside that concrete are steel bars. And when that water gets to the steel bars, it can rust them, they expand, and they cause cracks. And so the sooner you see those cracks, the better off you are. But nothing is better than just kind of constantly doing an evaluation. And there's nothing wrong with walking the project and taking photographs, say in January of one year, and then taking photographs of the same conditions randomly, and then seeing and marrying them up and see if you see something. Mm-hmm. Of course, you can always go and hire an expert, some forensic construction person to kind of walk the project with you and take a look to see if you find anything that stands out.
Yeah. There's a pretty simple way you can keep track of a crack, and you see this in professionals. They have more sophisticated materials, but you can just put a piece of tape adjacent to a crack and kind of mark it, and then you come back, like you say, in a week, a month, a year, and if you can see if that crack's getting wider or shifting, like tectonic plates or something.
Yeah, they have very little devices. You can get them like at Home Depot or Ace Hardware, and they'll measure cracks. And you mentioned, like, for example, garages, in below grade garages, which serve as a form of foundation. You look for that water intrusion in those garages, and they'll usually come up with some cracks, and you could put one of those crack monitors, and that will help you identify it. I wouldn't let the crack go too far. That water that's coming through the wall is again coming through, and it's touching those steel bars, and they'll rust with time. Yeah. So you have to catch it within that 10 years. I mention that because it's so important, because you could find a problem in year 11 and the law doesn't allow you to recover the money that's necessary to repair it. But if you catch it within 10 years, you can do that.
We're talking with Dan Rottinghaus. He's with the firm Berding and Weil, and as I said in the intro, had a recent big settlement with San Francisco Homeowners Association with a building that had a heat gain problem. It was a design flaw. Rather than, a catastrophic collapse, what a lot of people are coping with these days seems to be mold problems, and that also, of course, is water and moisture related, and maybe in part because of what you were talking about, buildings that are sealed up so tightly these days and super insulated. is there a cause of action around conditions that could lead to mold? Maybe it's not really there yet, but you think it's going to develop later and then be circulating in HVAC systems or something?
There are, Barry. Again, as you mentioned, mold is just a function of the water that gets to, like drywall, and that the materials that make up the drywall will allow for the creation of the mold. Some molds are not, health hazards. They're out in the air just as you walk. Others, though, have toxic properties to them. And the biggest problem we see is that the water that's getting into your unit where you actually see the mold, it's in the wall cavity that you can't see where it's really spreading so rapidly. So one of the things that Berding and Weil does as the largest construction defect firm in the state, we have a lot of deep resources with these various forensic engineers. Some are indoor environmental engineers, some are structural engineers, construction people like general contractors. And we have a complementary program for homeowner associations that if you're within your 10 years and you need an inspection, we'll come out and do that inspection for you at no cost. And that way you can be assured that at least you're catching whatever are the, defects that we can identify within that first 10 years. And you don't have to wait and worry that in year 11 or year 20 or 50 years down the road that you've got a significant problem that you never addressed at the time.
Yeah. Is it a safe assumption that building standards here in California are higher than a state like Florida, for example? I know that the condo in Surfside, as you said, was about 50 years old, and there's a lot of buildings in California that are much younger than that. But I'm thinking about, of course, seismic safety and environmental regulations. Do we have a good likelihood of being in safe buildings in California?
Yes, Barry. I think that California is at the forefront of the protection for the homeowners. Most of the standards that are adopted by the states are national standards, and then they're adopted within their own local communities, usually at the county level, but the state building code. California, for homeowner associations, has a standards of building construction, and they're set forth in the law, and they identify, standards of work that are to be expected by the homeowner association at the time it buys into the building. So those are the standards that I'm talking about that apply within that first 10 years. It used to be the law up until about 2000 that you had to wait for a problem, but the legislators saw that made no policy sense, that you'd have to wait, say, for an earthquake to find out that you didn't have a proper structure. So now this law called Title VII, it allows a homeowner association to make a claim against its contractors and developers who put together the project before the problem becomes, a disaster or some collapse or something that's significant. It allows you to get it repaired right away so that you don't have that problem down the road.
Very good. This is good information. Dan Rottinghaus from Berding and Weil. Is there a website we can send listeners to if they're interested in checking in on this?
You sure can. So that would just be www.berding, that's BERDING, and then WEIL.com.
There you have it. Pretty simple. Dan, thanks for your time today. This is informative, and we appreciate your expertise.
Thank you very much, Barry.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Yeah, well, add that to your list of things to worry about if you didn't have enough on your mind. Get the flashlight, head for the basement. Check out the water damage. All right, more to come on Wine Country Live. 1 hour left on today's show, and during that segment ahead, we'll be talking with Bernie Narvaez, a Napa City Council member. Get an update from his perspective on how things are going down at City Hall. Stay tuned. That's on the way. First, these messages.